Tales of the Legion Project podcast. From the pages of Legends, it's the Cosmic Boy miniseries. Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of the Tales of the Legion Project podcast. I am your host, Eric.
And I'm Peter.
And Peter and I are here today, as I said at the top, to talk about the 1986 miniseries, Cosmic Boy issues 1 through 4.
You're one of your favorite characters, right?
One of my very favorites from the Legion. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was very excited to read this miniseries back in the day.
So you did collect it back in the day?
Oh yeah. There was no way I was going to miss this.
Right. Yeah. Same here. Especially with Legends going on.
Mm-hmm.
I saw in a one of those DC releases, just as I was randomly looking for like original art or whatever, and they called it a first because it was the first ever miniseries spin-off from another miniseries.
Yes. I actually had noted that as well. So apparently editor Mike Gold thought it would be fun or funny or both, I don't know, to have a spin-off of a miniseries from a miniseries.
I don't know about the factuality of that. I didn't research it, but I'll take their word. Sure.
Yeah. And just so if we have any new listeners, Peter, I just want to remind them that the Tales of the Legion Project is our means of talking about Legion things, Legion adjacent things, which are not part of the Baxter run that we talk about in the Legion Project podcast.
So, for instance, this is a mini series. We've done annuals. We've done an animated movie.
Mm-hmm.
So any sort of like extraneous comic or up property or otherwise that's Legion related or Legion centric, maybe we'll get to one day. And we should also note that we are recording this in our anniversary month of September, so we'll include this as part of our anniversary, our big build up for the Universo project that is coming next episode.
That's right.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, Peter.
Happy anniversary. Speaking of the Universo project, we did a contest, and it was a contest to win the 4 issues of the Universo project. And all someone had to do was just email and say, I want those issues or whatever. We had hundreds, Eric. I didn't realize we had so many listeners. Thousands. I'm lying.
Well, no, wait. We have hundreds of listeners.
Yes, we do. That we do. The downloads prove that. So with this email, Universal rules my universe, and copies of the Universal Project would rock my world. Thanks for the chance, and thanks for the podcast. Long live the Legion Project podcast. The winner in Canada, Troy Wilson.
Yay! Congratulations, Troy. And of course, we expect a full report on your reading of the Universal Project.
That's right.
You have homework. I'm not the only one.
So send me your address, Troy. Oh, no, I have the address. I'm sorry. I have the address. And I will email to make sure it's the correct address. And by the time Troy listens to this, hopefully they'll already be on their way in time for the first part of the Universal Project. And then Troy can play along, as everybody else can, because these issues are on the DCU app. I'm assuming they're on Comixology, or you might have it in your collection, unread, lo these many decades.
And possibly even, in back issues, back issue bins, although with the pandemic and the shutdown and everything, man, have back issue prices just skyrocketed on certain things.
Oh, really?
So
Hmm.
yeah, ooh, I can't believe how much things are going for on the open market. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I got mine on eBay because I had sold mine as part of a Legends eBay collection years ago. So with like I sold Legends plus all the spin-offs and the crossovers just in one big chunk years ago.
So
So I,
did you have all that stuff, all
oh
those
yeah,
connecting issues and
oh
everything?
yeah, sure.
Oh wow.
You know me. Especially after the crisis, right? You know, it was the
Mm.
next big thing. And there's actually an element of Legends that I'll talk about when we get into this. Um, so it was exciting, right? 1986 was an exciting time. We got a new Superman, a new Wonder Woman, Legends, a whole new DC universe. So you had to read everything. I think there was one issue I didn't have, like a detective issue, where he's sort of strung up with a whole bunch of crows hanging off of him.
Okay. I
I
think I
think
remember
that,
that cover.
yeah, I think that was the one I didn't. I've never read. So, but yeah, I had the Cosmic Boy, so I had to find these on eBay. So I found them on eBay, not expensive at all. So
Oh, that's good.
now
That's
they're
good.
back in my collection.
And maybe those are the only copies on eBay. I have no idea. How popular was this? I guess is what I'm leading into. I guess I should have looked that up to see what kind of sales there were for this issue or this miniseries. I doubt they were, extensive, even though it was coming out of Legends.
It probably helped, and I think it's certainly written with an eye for a non-Legion reader.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the Legion had a certain amount of success, as they mentioned in one of the solicitations. So it was like a no-brainer for them to say, yes, we're going to feature a Legionnaire. They're going to use they're popular enough to warrant a mini series. They've already had a special. That wasn't even Legion. It was the subs. They already had Legionnaires 3. They played around with 2 different volumes. So to have another mini series shortly after all of that must speak to some popularity with the
Wait a minute.
concept.
Wait, did 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 this the sub special, was that the first?
Outside of Karate Kid,
Oh, that's true. So we had that's right. Karate Kid in the 70s, late 70s, right?
you had Secrets of the Legion of Superheroes,
Okay, and then it was the sub special,
and then
right?
it was the subs. Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, okay. Well, okay. I guess that's still kind of interesting that the subs get a special before, the Legion proper do, but either way. Yeah, to what you were saying about Legends and stuff and the popularity of the Legion. I did notice in Legends number 2, and I don't know if we want to get into this now, but I'll just throw it out there, Peter. You can edit this out if you want. Legends number 2, they discuss in the letters page area the origin of the series, and in there it mentions that Paul Levitz was making Cosmic Boy available for a spinoff, this miniseries.
right,
So somebody at DC wanted the Legion involved in this,
right.
so
And
that's
because
interesting.
I think Levitz, we might have talked about this in one of our regular episodes where we were talking about Legends, the origins of Legends. I believe Levitz was highly involved with whatever it was going to be,
Hmm.
and maybe that's why he included Cosmic Boy. And then eventually, instead of Crisis of the Soul or Crisis on Captive Earth, it became Legends with a whole other team. So they might have pooled concepts. Things might have already been in the works, and they're like, all right, we have to include such and such. And
Mm-hmm.
Legends was this is the element that I was going to talk about. That it's such a introduction to this new DC universe that they had to include Titans, they had to include a Legionnaire, they had to include Firestorm, who was popular, Flash, who was going to get a book eventually,
Mm.
a new Justice League that was going to get a new book eventually. All these things had to be in the works. A new Superman, like we said, a new Wonder Woman is coming up. A new Blue Beetle, right? They show Blue Beetle because the Blue Beetle series. So it's like here's the map, Crisis destroyed the map, and Legends sort of laid it back out again in a very surfacey way.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense to, well, Legion is one of our most popular titles. We better include a character.
Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. So that means then I don't remember what the issue was, but when Paul Levitt's introduced in the main book, the idea of Cosmic Boy taking a leave of absence, going on this vacation with his girlfriend Lita, Night Girl. I mean, how many months ago was that in terms of publication time? That was quite a while ago, as I recall.
It was issue 23.
Okay.
It was issue 23, and Cosmic Boy comes out the same month as Legion of Superheroes issue 29. So that's 6 months.
Okay. So
six issues.
That's not too far. So yeah, so he was yeah, they were planning on it. They were planning for it. And so he's just getting it in there, working it in. Wow, right. That's really cool.
Right. And what's so interesting is coming out of it, right? So the last issue, number 4, comes out in December of 1986, after the first Universo Project chapter. So we didn't want to disrupt the flow and like do a Universo chapter and then do Cosmic Boy. So we jumped it by like a couple weeks, right? If we're trying to go in chronological publishing order.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to wait until the Universo Project is finished, until Cosmic Boy comes back into the Legion. So we get a buffer like beforehand, and we get a few months buffer after until he actually comes back and says, hey, Time Trapper is doing something crazy, So.
Well, okay, so that's a perfect segue into just kind of giving an overview of the series. So what we got here is we got Cosmic Boy. Okay, well, actually, let me back up. So there was a house ad that I found for the miniseries, and I remember seeing this in the pages of the DC Comics that I was reading back then, which is what got me really excited, because that's how I learned about things back in the 80s, was what's in the comic books, because was there even an equivalent of previews back then? I don't know. Or I happened to be talking to someone who somehow knew something. So anyway, so there's this ad. It says it's just an image from the issue 1 cover, but at the bottom it says, from the pages of Legends comes the continuing saga of Cosmic Boy, the story of one man's perilous journey through time, space, and the depths of his soul. Which kind of sounds like Doctor Who to me, but anyway, this miniseries follows Cosmic Boy and Night Girl, his girlfriend Night Girl, as they deal with a changed 20th century history, at least from their perspective, as well as things involving the Legends miniseries, and of course, as is revealed, the Time Trapper. And as Peter mentioned, this series serves as a lead-in to events coming up after the Universal Project.
And we'll get deeper into this story as we go, for sure, definitely. So in anticipation of this, which we've been talking about in our regular episodes, I'm certain you've probably had some. And how long has it been since you read this the last time?
Since it was first published.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Probably this. I'm not sure if it's the same. I might have read it before I sold it off. How do I want to talk about this? I want to lead into the general thought section. It's going to work as a Legion miniseries for our purposes, right? For us.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to work as a Legends miniseries, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's got a lot of weight on its shoulders, right?
Yeah.
And does it succeed because of all that?
Yeah.
All right. So
since you brought that particular part up, I'll just throw it out here. I feel like that it suffered because of that. If it were just a straight Legion book, Legion miniseries, with I get why they're connecting it to Legends and everything, but I just felt like that whole part of it was, I don't know, wasted opportunity. If not wasted opportunity, it was ham-handed. That's the term I'm looking for. It seemed like the first 2 issues were really just a lead in to get to the meat of the book, which is this revelation about the time trapper.
Right. Yeah,
And
I got that too. By the time you're done with issue 2, you're like, "Oh, this is a 4-issue miniseries in 2 parts."
yeah,
Right? The issue 1 and 2 is one, even though the two stories connect, issue 1 and 2 is very much like Legends, Legends, Legends. Issue 3 and 4 is Legion, Legion, Legion.
mm-hmm.
So I kind of got that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very what's that? Not dysfunctional. Maybe that too. Has a duality to it that it just doesn't. I don't think it meshes well. I mean, Paul and the artists, they try their best to just kind of get everything smoothed over and whatnot, but there's some edges there still.
Yeah, yeah. And we've been talking about Legends in the regular podcast, and how disappointed I've been.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of pushes that same feeling every now and then, because it has to do so much. It has to put a Legionnaire in the 20th DCU 20th century to bear
The post crisis DCU 27.
post. Well, that's what I was gonna say. To bear witness to the whatever this new DC universe is, right?
Yes.
Plus, it's mucking around with the origins of the Legion itself,
Mm-hmm.
and it connects with Legionnaires 3 and whatever they need to do in the future with this new Superman and the origin of the inspiration of the Legion and the Time Trapper. And I think for me it got better. I think it got better. Like, it's one of those that started off, I have a lot of questions about some motivations about things. And then when you get to, like, even the time exploration, like trying to get back through time in issue 3, or trying to go back to the future, that was kind of fun,
Mm-hmm.
to see some of the visuals,
Yeah.
familiar visuals.
Yeah.
And then you go to 4, and um, the stuff I was able to pull out of issue 4 made me enjoy that issue, even if it's still part of the overall miniseries. That's kind of like, okay, I don't hate it, I don't love it. I think it's kind of unfortunate that the two mini Legionnaires 3 and Cosmic Boy. I don't know if I don't think I would ever pick a favorite. I would sort of put them sort of the same. They exist. They have a purpose. One builds on the other, and okay, it's like Levitt's kind of slowly. This Levitt's train is going real slow because he can't answer everything right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're too much in the beginning of everything, so he can't answer, and that's coming. It's coming. They got a big crossover. They want to sell some books. It's coming. So yeah, that's yeah. I don't even want to say it's not an average book. It's just I'm a little conflicted with, like, I really wanted to love it, and there are some good things about it. The covers are fantastic.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
The artwork is good. Some of the story bits are really good. Some of the promise of some of the things are really good. And then it's just like, well, but what's that? And why did we go there? And
Mm-hmm.
okay. And
Mm-hmm.
here we are. This is good. And all right, now I got to wait another 6 months. Okay.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yes. Yes. And I'll add to that, just as a general point, I guess, is that, I guess I had, from a storytelling standpoint, and I always talk about characterization and character development, right? And while I like how they're setting up Cosmic Boy as, because he's the Legion founder, he's a Legion leader at one point. He's apparently a 20th century history buff now, and so he Cosmic Boy has always had this confidence about him, even if it's a quiet confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's shaken in this series through the events of what happens in the Legends pages that they talk about here. And then at the end of issue 1, he even explicitly states, the anxiety that he's going through. Okay, so then there's that, and then they just kind of drop it, and even Night Girl, who comes across as very strong and confident, and Cosmic Boy's anchor in many ways in this relationship. Then suddenly her characterization kind of shifts into the sort of whiny girlfriend mode that is typical of Silver Age Legion stories. So it's not like it doesn't have some sort of connection to the Legion, but it's just like, why are we getting these potentially interesting characterization moments that then are just kind of dropped or shifted?
Right.
And I just like, oh, come on, just give me a complete and consistent story from issue 1 to issue 4.
Yeah, I mean, there's some high concept stuff that I love,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some Legion concepts that I love, and makes me want to go on a whole other journey, with the Legion lore. But then there's inconsistencies even with how it connects to Legends, and um, uh, an easy read. I didn't feel like I slogged through it, so I can't say
No.
that. One of my notes I did write, I don't know if you agree with this. I said, "Wow, this does not feel like Paul Levitt's Legion."
Yes.
And I think that's why I wrote it. It was written for a non-Legion reader, right? It doesn't go deep into that Legion lore. They'll make references and throw some names out, but it's not like it's not like they didn't bring up Interlac, and they didn't bring up, they're not like going deep,
Mm-hmm.
right? Throw out some character names for people who know them, but they don't really explain them. Um, and as I was reading it, I forget, I think it was around like issue 2 or 3, or I think it was 2. I was like, this is written for the everyman, the every reader.
Mm-hmm.
And and so then it becomes just about the mystery of the history, right? uh, the mystery of what's going on with history, but not necessarily going into fully, because it affects, you know, the reason why RJ Brand brought the three of us together, because there was a Superboy, and they don't go into any of that.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of mention it. They mention generally it's our history, but they don't talk about the history.
Yeah.
So it's sort of interesting. That's a interesting. I guess that's a tightrope that Levitz just had to walk, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't.
Well, and in regards to issue 1 specifically, I'll come back to that point because there's something I want to say about that particular thing within issue 1.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the writing of it, the story. But I want to add on, I want to pile on, I guess, in that I don't know if you agree with this, Peter, but I felt like, because this is it lists the artists as, and maybe I should do the credits now, but
Mm-hmm.
we've already talked about Paul Levitz as the writer. The artists are listed as artists: Keith Giffen, Ernie Colon, and Bob Smith. And obviously, if you look at this, the style is very much Ernie Colon. So he's the penciler. So I assume Keith Giffen did breakdowns, or I don't know what exactly. And Bob Smith is the inker. And then just real quick, John Costanza, letters, Carl Gafford, colors, Karen Berger as editor. So the usual gang involved with Legion books. But my point here is that this, given that Keith Giffen is given an artist credit, this does not feel at all like a Giffen drawn book or a Giffen art. Doesn't feel like Giffen architecturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the story pacing. I think some of that is because of the Levitz involvement. Like I tried to compare this to Legionnaires 3, which did not have Paul Levitz involvement, right?
Mm.
So there was a difference. There felt like this felt less experimental, maybe, or not. That's not the right word. Less. There's a sort of chaotic nature to Giffen. There's
Mm-hmm.
this. I feel like there's a fringe, a frazzle to it, a very loving sort of energy that just ripples that I think
Yes.
Ernie Cologne kind of really grooved on in that Legionnaires 3 miniseries
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now we had Mindy Newell doing the dialogue. So is this one, I can't imagine Levitz is only doing the dialogue because he has to be very aware of what's going on because it's going to tie into his book. So the weight of Levitz is probably uh, that's the thing that kind of maybe smooths out the Giffenness of it.
Mm.
Because I can see certain things in the artwork that feel very Giffen, pacing, all the build-ups to all of the splash pages feel very Giffen-esque.
Yeah.
Hitting your reader with like boom splash page. Because that's not something I necessarily get with like say Ernie Cologne on other projects that he may have done. So I think you're right. I think there's a tempered feeling because Levitz is there, right? And Levitz and Giffen together, one of them feels like they are the center point, and the other one feels like they are the manic energy. It's like order and chaos, and you throw them together, right? So I get that. I feel that, and maybe that's why you bring in Keith Giffen because he's so fast at telling the visual story, right? He can look at Levitz's story and go, okay, well, here's where I think, okay, do this, and maybe throw this in, and okay, I like that, and do this. Okay, there you go, Ernie Cologne, go do it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's what I assumed was going on. It's just that I guess I'm not as responsive to Cologne's mm, development of that overall visual story that Giffen may have provided.
Right, right. Maybe he had to stick a little too much to the page because there's so many other things happening,
That's yeah, I can see that.
legends and whatever. There's even a couple times where there's one panel where they show Superman. They say it's a recording of Superman's first public recording, right? And it's just a face of Superman, and it feels like somebody went in there and said, "I better draw it a little bit more like John Byrne and less like Ernie
Right.
Cologne."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
You know?
noticed that too. That was
Yeah.
interesting.
So I think there's a lot of eyes on this, and maybe it doesn't allow for major wild creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the covers because we can knock out this right away. Let's talk
Okay.
about the covers. Steve Lytle doing the covers, unlike Legionnaires 3, where Ernie Cologne did all the covers. So that was an interesting choice. But my God, these are probably some of the best covers that we've seen. Like, even including the Legion stories. I mean,
Oh yeah.
and they all have echoes to things that are going on inside the book. You can even pinpoint certain panels themselves where it's like, oh, there's that cover. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's that cover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, talk about the covers. Do you have a favorite,
Oh
or is it just too hard this time around?
wow. I if I had to choose one, I would choose the fourth issue just because
Oh,
of
okay.
the space setting, the time trapper, the colors. There's some action going on there. It's just a nice little actiony thing. But man, that I guess I'm going to go backwards. Issue 3 with that, it's just simple color swirling on the page, but it's so cool looking.
And especially when you compare it to the line work, which is at the end of issue 2, where they show you the cover for issue 3,
Mm.
but it doesn't have all the colors, so you get to see the line work that then gets washed out when they decide to do the overlay of colors. So you don't see it's
Oh
not as
yeah,
detailed,
yeah.
but you get to see what the artist had to do,
Hmm.
what Steve Lido had to do. Yeah,
And there was I forgot, did I send this to you, Peter? There was some art posted on Comic Art Fans.
I saw
Uh,
some of that. Yeah,
so yeah, you get to see that issue 3 similarly as they show it in at the end of issue 2, but here it's inked. So you see like the bottom part of the swirls, they're all inked black, but then the rest of it is in these red lines.
right.
And so it's just it's much better looking than what we saw at the end of issue 2. But it still evokes, that chaotic swirl. What? Not a whirlwind. What am I? What's the water equivalent?
Whirlpool.
Whirlpool. Thank you.
Yeah.
of
The time
what's
storm.
going on there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the time storm.
I have to say though, issue 2, not my favorite. That's my least favorite of these.
Okay. Odd to see the shock lines, so the emotion lines
Oh
like that.
yeah,
Like just
yeah.
I thought that was odd.
Well, and the way that the people are around them, yeah, are being shown. It's just, it looks, the perspective is weird on that,
Hmm.
because people are above them, upside down. It's just odd. It does though, and I do appreciate this, and maybe that's what they were going for. It does evoke, what we see in issue 1 with all this circular patterns going on the page.
Right.
And so I thought, well, maybe that's what they're kind of going for. And then the issue 3, you kind of see that too, but not as clearly defined. But then they get to issue 4, and it's like they totally abandon the idea. So I don't know. I don't. Maybe they started with Steve Liddell started with one pattern or idea, and then he dropped it. But yeah. Other than my minor complaints about issue 2, they're all really good.
Yeah, and that first one is so good. All the metal
Mm-hmm.
and just Cosmic Boy standing there and the powers and I mean that's fairly fantastic.
Yeah,
That's probably my favorite.
the detail of all that junk, the metallic junk that's being manipulated by Cosmic Boy. That's the kind of stuff I love to see.
And the logo itself, if you compare it to the logo from Who's Who, which came out, months before this the Who's Who issue with Cosmic Boy came out a year, maybe even almost a year prior to this, if not more. The font is the same. It's sort of the same, and then someone just decided to make it more interesting
Hmm.
for the mini series. Whoever that is, Todd Klein or whoever, I don't know who. But if you look at the font, it has the same kind of feel. But I love the title logo, the colors as you mentioned, all that purple and magenta. It's just, yeah, very good,
Mm-hmm.
very good, and eye catching. You have to imagine maybe that's why they went with Steve Lytle.
Oh yeah.
So, we got to sell some books.
And
Oh, go
one
ahead.
just one more thing on that. Speaking of that, issue 1, you got that great splash image of action of Cosmic Boy doing something. The purple of the logo, and then you got that little word box. When history went wild, and the wild is stylized and everything. I mean that this cover really does yell at you. Buy me.
You mentioned about the Legends part of this mini series sort of not living up to what you wanted, and I should make note because they made note of it in, let's see, I think it was a back issue article, that there is a difference between a Legends crossover and a Legends spinoff. So they wanted, even though it has the chapter 4, 8, 13, 20, crossovers were meant to be more directly related.
Mm.
Spin-offs were meant to be exactly what it says, just sort of a spin-off.
Yeah.
I think that's a BS argument, but whatever. Whatever they want to say to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
One more. I have a few other larger points. Legionnaires 3 was Time Trapper basically versus Lightning Lad by the end. Cosmic Boy is Time Trapper versus Cosmic Boy. So, do we get Time Trapper versus Saturn Girl later?
I was wondering the same thing, and I'm going to guess no. Other than maybe down the road when what is revealed here, or at least the start of that, culminates later, in the main title storyline. I because I my memory's a little faulty because I don't remember exactly what happens there. But so other than that, I'm like, I don't think they do anything like. I mean, obviously they don't do anything like this, where
A
it's
mini
a
series,
mini
right?
series or some sort of special or whatnot. And so they unless they have some sort of confrontation in the main book, like I said, I'm going to be really pissed that that one of the other founding members and a woman founding member doesn't get some sort of uh, uh, I guess interaction with the time trapper in the same vein that Lightning Lad and Cosmic Boy do here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let that hang there because I do know something. So
Okay.
I'll let it hang. And then I wrote here, I can see why it is a Legends crossover begrudgingly.
Mm.
If you go with the Legends theme and all of the conversations that Phantom Stranger is having with Darkseid, this is Cosmic Boy literally trying to save or ensure that that Legends as he knows it stays consistent. The 20th century history, Superboy's connection to the Legion, Superman himself, the legend of the colonization from Earth, the very origins of the Legion of Superheroes. So you could sort of thematically make those connections,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when I start to think of it like that, I'm like, okay, I can forgive Levitz a little bit more for a story that I feel like there are some one-off issues in the regular Legion title that are more consistent and more engaging than 4 issues of Cosmic Boy, right? And that's a
Mm-hmm.
little unfair because it's a cast of 23 and multiple storylines, I get it. But it's like, here's a chance for Levitz to do one storyline, just one storyline. That's all he's got to do, right? No tangents, no spin offs, no whatever. And, but, okay. And he's putting it on the weight of the shoulders of Cosmic Boy, the very poster boy for Legion of Superheroes,
Mm-hmm.
right? You could say. So I get it. So when I start looking at it in those terms, instead of just like an adventure romp, I'm like, yeah, I see it. There it is. There's that. That's the Legends thing that they're trying to do in the miniseries actually coming to play as opposed to the Legends miniseries where they just like to talk about it, but they never really show it,
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true. That's true. Uh, I think though he falls pretty short though. Still,
Sure.
the connection is tenuous, but it is there. You're right,
Yeah.
and because obviously because he wants to resolve it in the main book.
Right. Right. He can't do it all here.
Yeah.
He can tease it, he can start to develop it, but he's a little hampered.
So it's a really interesting, I guess, way of trying to introduce the Legion maybe to a larger audience by tying it into the Legends miniseries, which they know is going to get a lot of attention. And yet it's not really I mean, it is and it isn't. It's not really a Legion of Superheroes book. And
Right.
so what is the point? And they're trying to push this future story that they're going to tell, months and months from now. So what is the raison d'etre of this of this miniseries?
I think it's more connecting to Superman, right? Because there's constant talk about Superman. Cosmic Boy says, and we can start getting to like some details. Cosmic Boy says in one of the issues, Superman's time is my favorite. And then he says, you know, somebody's messing around with history because somebody's messing around with Superman, or the very idea of what Superman means to the Legion, even though they don't go deep. And then of course it ends with what it ends with, right? Which we'll talk about. So I think that's what they did. They, instead of focusing it through the Legion lens, Levitz is focusing it through the big hotness of the moment, which is Byrne's Superman.
Mm.
And that's why I think, because you're right, we don't even get like a splash page of the Legion, right? Like think of Ernie Colon in one of those backup stories where I think it is Cosmic Boy, or one of them is talking about the Legion, and he just has like all these floating Legion heads and symbols around to kind of go Legion, 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 But in this, there's none of that. There's
Mm-hmm.
no great shot of the team. There's no great shot of oh, look, that's what they mean. They talk about it.
Yeah.
Night Girl says, why are these people, it's a good thing 1,000 years from now, everybody understands how great heroes are. They make comments about the 30th century, but they don't really show it. So I think it's they're trying to. DC was very much about the present at this moment in
Yeah.
1986, and this story is about the present. Cosmic Boy's past, but our present.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then when you start getting into all the time stuff, I have a lot of notes about like present versus the future, and they keep saying you can't change the past, but it's like, no, you can, because DC's writers exist in your past, which is our present. So they can mess around with you all they want, right? Like it's that whole, yeah. So so much. There's so much. There's a very present feeling to this story.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the things, Legionnaires 3 ends with a time trapper saying there will be other games. So
Right.
that notion plays a lot.
Yep.
And this is just a little thing. When they did leave Cosmic Boy and Night Girl, when they left in Legion 23, the head of the Time Institute, Sir Curtis Senius, said, I wonder if it is wise to tempt fate so, after they had left. So as a nice little like foreshadowing or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you know. So
Well, that almost puts it on Cosmic Boy's shoulders for what is about to happen, but that's
yeah.
not really accurate.
Want to roll with some big thoughts about the issues themselves? What do you
Sure.
got?
Yeah.
Throw out something.
So on issue one here, I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but we talked about the weirdness of this series. Um, but to come back to something that I mentioned earlier, so we get the opening of this is sort of a retelling of the aftermath of what happened in Legends with Cosmic Boy, with his fight with Brimstone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very clearly, obviously, the Legends connected and whatnot. But which is odd because we see it, if we go back to the idea of what we were saying before about this being a Legion miniseries connected to a major crossover event in DC at DC. Yet we get nothing about Cosmic Boy, who he is. Obviously we know who he is because we're following him, but and the Legion, but there's really nothing in here in these first few pages to ground the reader to the fact that Cosmic Boy is from the future. He's part of the Legion of Superheroes, all this history. But then because he passes out, we do get 2 pages of Night Girl's origin, which understandable from the standpoint of, well, she's even lesser known than Cosmic Boy. And so it seems like they're just banking on the idea that people are coming to this because they know who Cosmic Boy is, or they're, at least aware that he's part of the Legion of Superheroes. But they may not know who the heck Night Girl is. So here you go.
Or they've read a little bit of Cosmic Boy in the Legends, and there might have been some,
And that might have been enough.
maybe.
I mean,
Maybe.
they do spell out, that he is from the future in the Legends issue.
Right.
They do spell that out and
Right.
ground the reader for that. But that's what I mean is that they're depending on you reading this other thing to understand what's going on in this first issue of the eponymous title. The eponymous title. Sorry, the eponymous character. Anyway, Cosmic Boy. That's just an odd choice to me. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I get it, because it's his miniseries, but it's not about him, but it is about what he discovers.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my notes later is about some of the things that happen is Levitt's a couple times in letter columns talked about how interesting it would be to write a story, a comic, or whatever about the foundation of the United Planets and how it came to be. And I feel like he's pulling some of those notes in this.
Yeah.
And unlike Bendis, who now currently is able to, who has written a story not only about the development of the United Planets, but is now continuing that story, Levitz never got that chance in his version
Mm.
of the Legion. Because it jumps from, like what you mentioned, it jumps in that first issue from here's the establishing shot of everything that's connected to Legends. Although it doesn't make sense, it's not right. The editors failed because he's crawling out of debris, right? Which is where I assume was his big battle with Brimstone with the Justice League, and then Brimstone punched a building and it fell on top of them, right?
Hmm.
But in Legends, he was rescued by the Titans.
Right.
And then he goes, "Oh no, I gotta go find." And then he's in Titan's Tower, and then he's like, "I gotta go find my girlfriend." So what did he do? Go back to Metropolis, get beat up again, and that's where we get this? Because they're even saying he's no Teen Titans. What's he doing at Titan's Tower? First of all, no, none of these people would be on Titan's Tower because it's an island. It's not in the middle of the city.
Right.
So it's a weird. They
Yeah.
totally messed that up.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of inconsistencies about when did it all happen, that he flew away and he came back but he got hurt, but then he met Superman and da 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 da. So they're telling it that I will very quickly you get to the meat of it is that history has gone bad, right? So yeah, I get that point. It's although I did learn, because I guess I just forgot from Who's Who that he was born on Earth. I didn't realize that. That is one thing I did learn about Cosmic Boy this whole miniseries.
I have forgotten that.
Yep, and it does say it in Who's Who that his father was on Earth at the time and he was born on Earth.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they were
Yeah.
just visiting or something.
Or he was working. Or
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
And the other element that I got out of these 4-issue miniseries that is Cosmic Boy related, and it's, again, this is nothing new. Night Girl's very on point description of him about his duty mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I kept trying to come up with what is the word, and then she threw it out there, duty, and I was like, yes, that's it. Just like Brainy is all like, his scientific and whatever. Cosmic Boy's like duty. That's why he has to interrupt kisses and all this other stuff, because he's got it. He's got a job to do.
Right.
Yeah.
You had mentioned Man of Steel and his meeting with Superman here on that we get a flashback of on page 8, right?
Yeah.
And so I felt like they're kind of glossing over the no more Superboy thing. And I went, why did we not get, why didn't it open with that basically to get into the story, I guess. But, Man of Steel, I looked this up. I think Man of Steel, at least 5, if not 6, were out at this time. So people would have read those. Again, I'm assuming people are going to go read everything in DC Comics at this time to get these connections. So by that point, plus we had the Superman entry in Who's Who, which we talked about in one of the main Legion Project podcast episodes. So we already know, right, that there wasn't a Superboy at this point. Or am I misremembering the how direct they were about that in the Superman or the Man of Steel title?
What they explain in Man of Steel is that between the time he discovers his origins and goes public for the first time, not as Superman, but just as Clark Kent, the power. Ma Kent is collecting that scrapbook of all of his saving, all of his actions, tornado disaster averted, flood averted, but there's nobody knows it's a person behind it. It's
right.
Just sort of like these weird events. But I know me as a reader at that time, it was still a waiting game. We knew that there was going to be no Legion connection. I think more because letter columns and trade articles said there was going to be no Legion connection.
Okay.
And between reading, the reading Man of Steel, there is no Superboy. We knew they were going to take Superboy away again from solicits, meanwhile column. You know, it came from like the outside. That's why it was so interesting, and that's why I was reading everything, because I was like, oh, how are they going to do it? And you're right. We're getting this meeting of Cosmic Boy and Superman. It's a flashback, and it happened off panel. It didn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's like this is the major point.
It's the crux of this
Yeah.
whole story. And
Oh.
and it's told so weirdly in this issue.
And maybe it's because you're right. Maybe because the Superman title hadn't begun yet, even though we got Man of Steel. So it's Superman in the present, but his own title is not in the present yet.
Right. Yeah. So
You know,
they're playing a little fast and loose because they haven't started Superman with the John Byrne Superman, and that history has not been written, so to speak.
history has been changed, but it's a history that hasn't even been written yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is so bizarre. And this is not even the first inkling that we really got. Now, the first, I keep saying we're hearing about it outside of comics, but there was that Booster Gold issue that we read where Booster Gold met Superman post-crisis. Not quite the Byrne one, though.
Right.
Because that was how many issues ago? That was, ooh, boy, like 4 months prior to this. 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Oh, no, more than that. Like 4 or 5 months prior to this. Where Superman says, oh, that's a pretty sophisticated ring you have on. You know?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
But it's like, wait, wouldn't you say, oh, that's a Legion ring? I know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, or even if you were trying to hide your secret, you would give the readers something a little. So it's even then Dan Jurgens is like, oh, there is no connection with the Legion. We know there's going to be no connection with the Legion because Man of Steel hadn't even started yet. So there's that weird limbo Superman already making that suggestion of there's no ties to the Legion of Superheroes. And now here, hey Superman, oh hey, cool costume, cool pink costume, great, you're a hero, great, dude, keep it up, kid. And then flies away, and then Cosmic Boy's, and then that's it. And he's like, and he screams in panic because his entire life is a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So weird, odd flashback and off panel, so odd. Because I guess people, you know, they were like, well, we don't want people to use Superman before Byrne really uses him. You know, it's okay in Legends because Byrne is drawing him, you know, but, you know, it's
it's bizarre. This time period in DC history is just weird.
So bizarre. Now, and here's the thing. Here's why I have these bigger ideas about the miniseries rather than sort of like issue by issue, is because, okay, so he lays out the fact that Superboy doesn't recognize him. He had no idea who I was. I'd known him since he was a Superboy, and he didn't remember me. Ah, and he screams, right? And then he makes from there, he takes it to, I've been watching television. Things don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
History doesn't feel right.
Go ahead. Maybe you're going to say it. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and there's 4 elements. Eventually we get to 4 elements. We get to Superman not being right. We get to man's use of nuclear power at this time.
Mm-hmm.
The history of it is wrong, according to Cosmic Boy, because they've developed it. They've developed nuclear power as weapons, and that's something that he says shouldn't have happened for centuries or years. Space travel, they should already be heading out to space to colonize worlds, and just superheroes in general. Like the very notion of superheroes being not trustworthy and all that. So it's like those 4 main elements he plays with, Levitz plays with, and
Mm-hmm.
Cosmic Boy. First of all, I love all that. And I kind of keep in mind, all right, we've had dialogue where they've said, oh, you know, we've lost some records about the mid-'80s because of certain catastrophes. And I guess in my mind, I used to always think, well, those catastrophes probably happened in the 80s or 90s. Well, no, maybe they happened later, but they just lost those records,
right.
You know. My thing with with the Superman thing and this weird limbo thing and this weird John Burns got to introduce him and all this other stuff is Cosmic Boy really should not recognize this Superman. This should not be a Superman he recognizes. He's never met this Superman.
That's true. You're right.
He knows Kurt Swan Superman.
Yeah.
He knows Jose Luis Garcia Lopez Superman. He knows the 40-year-old Superman, right? And this is me getting way too deep with it, but it really does make sense. He's saying, "Hey, Superman, hey, John Byrne, I know you." No, you don't. You've never. That's the first time you've met him. And I was like, wait, suddenly this whole thing is such a weird, it's so weird when you deal with DC's timeline in 1986.
Yeah. Yeah, that mishmash of the different versions and playing, because it's very meta, right? Because it's within the universe on the pages we're reading it, but then all the machinations at DC Comics, the entity itself, and the writers and artists and all that, and what they want to do, and they just like since Crisis, every time they introduce some sort of earth-shattering event, a universe-altering event, it's just like this. It's always followed by this weird Reformation period where nothing makes a lot of sense, and mistakes are made, and eventually things kind of get smoothed out, but not ever really.
Yeah, no, you just sort of accept it and you go on.
Yeah,
little dominoes get dropped, and then one gets, and another and another. It's like by the end of this miniseries, I wanted Time Trapper to just pull his hood back, and it's just the DC bullet right there, right? Because that's really what's happening, like.
Oh my God.
I'm sort of jumping the issues here because I think this is the most fascinating part of this miniseries, especially in our conversations about the Time Storm, Superboy's origin or inspiration. The very notion of, let me talk about it in terms of the story. I love that Levitz has Cosmic Boy so confounded and confused and saying history is wrong. Because really what's happening is he's wrong. What Cosmic Boy, right? And just like the way Time Trapper, when we talked about how he, messed around with Lightning Lad, Cosmic Boy, the way Time Trapper messed around with Lightning Lad in those final issues in Legionnaires 3, Time Trapper was actively trying to drive Lightning Lad nuts. He was changing the world around him. He was putting him in all these things, right? All he did with Cosmic Boy is put him into the real DC universe and just said, "Go ahead." Now, Time Trapper didn't do anything. He didn't change history, right? He's not the one that changed history. He just put Cosmic Boy into the proper DC history, which at this time is post-crisis DC universe, and just sat back and laughed as Cosmic Boy went nuts.
Oh, okay. Should we just go to that?
We have to go to the bigger points, because I think this miniseries speaks to, what were you going to bring up?
Well, okay. So just real quick, since you mentioned it, I had the same thought about the history stuff. In my notes, but couldn't his history just be wrong? With Cosmic Boy, right?
Sure.
And and then of course me being the DC fan I am, I'm trying to make it work, right? So I'm like, because we've had, like with Commandy, that era where records were lost, and there's been other wars or catastrophes that have been mentioned in Legion history, and they're always bringing up the fact that, well, this time period is always a little wonky with us in terms of what we know because of this thing that happened, right? But yet the way that Cosmic Boy talks about the 20th century, this particular time in history, it seems so clear to him and understandable, and then yet he gets thrown in here, and it's like, this is not right. What's going on here, right?
Right.
Okay, but then with Time Trapper, that whole, I kept comparing this, yeah, especially issue 4, with what the Time Trapper was doing to Lightning Lad in Legionnaires 3, and the threat, which seemed a lot. I mean, there was a threat. I mean, I guess there's a threat here, but it's so, I don't know, so watered down, or not doesn't seem even real. It's just like, what is Time Trapper's point? What is he trying to accomplish here, other than to point Cosmic Boy in the direction of knowing what's going on? Why would he do that? Is it just to essentially brag? I'm bigger, better, faster, stronger, whatever, than all of you. I'm going to let you in on a little secret, and you can do nothing about it. So,
Yes.
there you go.
He is a petty mofo. Even though he says he doesn't have to be, right? Because in like issue 4, when he is sort of sending Cosmic Boy and Night Girl through his, mysterious base, and he says, in the end, destiny proclaims that I shall win, so I need not be petty about it, right? Because he says, I exist. I am the Time Trapper. I exist at the end of time. It doesn't matter what I do to you, because even if you win, I win.
Oh, so do you think it's just simple arrogance that he knows he wins because he exists at the end of time, but he has to go through the motions with the
No,
Legion?
it's games. It's all games, right? That's why I wanted to bring back that word
Okay.
games, because he says it a lot here, right? He says this is a game. The thing that he's playing with in this in the there it is in page 10 on in issue 4. This game, meaning the Cosmic Boy story, within the greater one.
Mm-hmm.
They don't dream of the full extent of my game if they knew how long I have been playing with them. And it does go back to we did talk about in the Legionnaires 3 that the Legion of superheroes, as far as the Time Trapper knows, may have a destiny that might be his undoing, yeah, but it doesn't matter. He's like, you remember that? Okay, speaking of Superman, remember issue 2 when Lex Luthor finds out who Superman really is because
Yeah.
the computer figures out, and Lex Luthor goes, "That's not Superman. Could never be Clark Kent. He would be someone who would use his." That's what Time Trapper does. The Legion's never going to do that. They may, okay, sure. There's destiny. No, I'm here. I won.
Oh, okay. So the rest of this is just him going back to your game idea. Just him playing around with the Legion because it amuses him.
It makes him laugh. That's
Yeah.
why he laughs at the end like a maniac,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then he can threaten and he can do what, because it doesn't matter. Oh, guess what? I got another game I'm going to play with you. And then after that, I got another game I'm going to play with you. And to go back to that original Edmund Hamilton story, he's a man bored at the end of time. He's playing chess with Brainiac of all people, right? He's bored. This guy's bored. He's got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So in his warped way. So Levitz is laying the groundwork for what will be the revelation in that Superman crossover, which is so hard not to talk about right now. And so there's two things here. Time Trapper warns Cosmic Boy at the end of this miniseries. I will let you go back to your time, but the next time one of you brats tries to go through time will be the last time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? To show how powerful he is. I'm not completely certain that all that time storm stuff is Time Trapper's doing, though. Okay? Like them trying to get through 86, either towards 86. I'm not entirely. I have some theories about, like, I don't think that's all Time Trapper, okay? But to go back to the Time Trapper for a second. So we know he can muck around with time. Cosmic Boy at the end of the miniseries is like, I better go tell the Legion. The other aspect of it, this notion that Cosmic Boy, and what you said, when you said Cosmic Boy could be wrong. His knowledge of history could be wrong. First of all, I love that Night Girl is the one that brings it up in one of the issues, right?
Yeah,
She's like, do you ever think maybe your holo visor things are
exactly.
wrong?
Yeah.
I was like, thank you. I wrote thank you, Lyda. Like, thank you for bringing that up because, Cosmic Boy, although he's right to be panicked when he sees that history is wrong, she was the one that's like, maybe your history holes could be the thing that's wrong. Like I loved that because to Cosmic Boy, he couldn't even imagine that history could be that what he knows history to be,
Yeah.
right?
He just accepts it as a matter of fact, kind of like I connect this to, there's something else in the story. I think it's in issue 2 where he rescues the payload of
Mm-hmm.
the shuttle explosion, because that is a key to, if they lost that, then everything is just messed up in terms of space exploration and where Cosmic Boy thinks 20th century humanity needs to be.
Right.
And so he's bringing that down, and the what's his name, the Godfrey from
J.
Legends.
Gordon Godfrey.
Yeah, his machinations in Legends is getting people in this state, anti superhero state, right? And so they're he's like I say, he's bringing the payload down, and he's like, hey, where would you guys like this? He's just like acting like nothing is wrong, and I tie that to uh his, I guess, 30th century naivete. How everybody just accepts Legion as good and wonderful and helpful, and yet obviously in this century that's not the case. And but so this whole idea of Cosmic Boy and just accepting how things are from his perspective, he's so entrenched in that mindset. It actually kind of surprises me because of I guess the way we've seen him deal with other things in the Legion stories of the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, is this hampering, limiting of Cosmic Boy's critical thinking, I guess. I don't know, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but just he's not the Cosmic Boy that I think of when I read this story. And this is just really just to move the plot forward. I get that from a storytelling standpoint. I get why they're doing what they're doing, but just a lot of things just don't ring true here,
Right?
either in story or outside, right? Like I said.
Yeah. Let me give you options, or let me give you my headiness with this.
All right.
Again, very hard to talk about this before the whole Superman crossover story because I don't want to talk necessarily about the Revelation, even though I think we might have mentioned it one or two times. Why are the history holos wrong? See, we take for granted that what we find out in the Superman crossover is the only thing Time Trapper is mucking around with about sending people back, right, to Superboy's time. But doesn't that also mean that anytime, because they specifically say when your research, when the Time Institute views past history, it wasn't this. It wasn't what we were reading in Legends.
Right.
So that means Time Trapper is also messing around with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the DC Krona inspecting the universes, the origin of the DC. Whenever you go back, whenever you try to view the origin of the DC universe, a crisis happens, right? Stuff blows up, antimatter, whatever. It's the same. I feel like what Levitz is kind of suggesting, it's the same thing. Whenever the 30th century either went back or viewed back, they were viewing or going back to what Time Trapper wanted them to go back to, right?
Right. Yes.
So, Cosmic Boy has a very Silver Age view of our DC present because that's where they went to all the time. was
Yeah.
Silver Age. So apparently in Superboy's Silver Age or Superboy's history, there was no Hiroshima to end World War II because he looks at the bombing of Hiroshima and he's like, "What?" Right?
Right. Right.
He looks at the Chernobyl, he looks at
Mm-hmm.
the all the big disasters of the 80s and he's like, "No, that didn't happen." Okay. So for him to stand in front of police like that, yeah, because in Silver Age comics they would be like, "Oh, hey
That's
man,
true.
thanks. Let's go get a milkshake," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Think of and here's the thing. I think back to this is why the Legionnaires were such a-holes all the time because, you know, they could do all those silly pranks and be wild and whimsical. Hey, Superboy, come join our team. Oh no, you stink. You can't do it. Yeah, yeah, you're the greatest of them all. Like it's this roller coaster of manipulation and crazy because that's how those Silver Age stories were written.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where they were going to. They never went to our real DC universe.
Yeah.
Until now. Meanwhile, that means not only did Cosmic Boy go there, but you have to assume that in that Booster Gold 2-issue story, so did Brainiac 5, Ultra Boy, and Chameleon Boy. They just didn't realize it.
Okay. Yes. Yes. That's true.
Because that's post-crisis. That's post-crisis. So that means Time Trapper allowed them to go to that.
Oh my God. This is
stories.
so what does that mean? In terms of Karate Kids series that preceded all this, right? So
that had to be see here. Okay, so let me go back to Cosmic Boy never met Byrne Superman, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But he keeps saying Superman's time is my favorite part of history, right? Now, he could be meaning Superman as Superboy, right? But they have met Superman.
Yes.
They've met right? We read a DC Comics Presents issue that they met Superman, right? So they met the Earth 1 pre-crisis Superman.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So in that revelation that I don't want to talk about, not only is it about Superboy's time, but clearly enough time had also passed that they could go to a Superman time.
Mm-hmm.
But a Superman time that was still honoring and still resonating that Silver Age feel.
Right.
Right. So and it's a time that we never get back again, right? Or if we do get stories like, I don't know, maybe in Convergence or Generation Shattered or whatever, if they ever do go back to pre-crisis 1980s, they can go back to it, and sometimes you see like the original Wonder Woman or whatever. You never see the original Earth 1 Superman. It's always still the Byrne version.
Mm-hmm.
They did it in Infinite Crisis when they showed the rockets that had left. They did show the pre-crisis rocket, I think, or maybe it was the Golden Age, and they showed Byrne's version of the rocket.
Yeah.
Because of that revelation, which is mostly focused around Superboy, it's like the Superman part got excised out, got cut out, right? Later. So I feel, and this goes back to one of my earlier thoughts about when they say you can't change the past. Yes, DC writers can absolutely change the Legion's past because it's our present.
Yeah.
And whatever new ways they want to write Superman is always going to affect the Legion. And it's not our universe that gets changed. It's the Legion's universe that gets changed. It's the Legion's future. It's the future of the Legion, or whatever you want to say. And so I also think there's a weird, well, let me not go there just yet, because that'll go on a whole other thing. So well, I don't know. So that was a lot of thoughts. That was my big thing, was how do you rectify what the DC universe is now to all those stories, to the revelation that we get. And it's very, we as readers, we clue in, as Night Girl does right away, that it's not history that's wrong. It's Cosmic Boy's memories are not right.
Yeah.
It's not they're right. They're uninformed. They're ill-informed. They're
misinformed.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll get to the word there somewhere.
Yeah. And that's very important to this whole idea, this whole plot of what's to come.
Right.
Because otherwise it's like well, my point, what I'm trying to say is that Levitz really has to throw in that idea, so that we don't continually question the veracity of what is to come.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just kind of falls apart.
Right.
So that's actually, uh, well, in my notes, what did I say about that? I liked how Levitz was throwing in real life, real history, from our
Right.
perspective,
Right.
to inform the misinformed history of Cosmic Boy.
Right.
So yeah, that was a nice little touch that I quite enjoyed.
And I think it makes sense, because it's DC. Again, we said DC is very much about the present. That's what, if one thing Legends does well is a bad word, but one thing it does well is lays out who really are going to be which characters are going to be the superstars, which characters are going to be the driving force behind this new DC universe. Um, all of these characters, and Superman definitely, Wonder Woman maybe, should be totally new to the Legion. They should just be looking at them going, "Oh, you are a Superman, but you're not my Superman."
How interesting it would have been if they would have approached it that way, as a means of getting into the mystery, as opposed to what they did here. Just to get, and it would reverberate throughout the Legion itself, and suddenly everybody's questioning the foundation of their own existence.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just a little too heady for
Which,
comic books.
I mean, in some ways, that is what they're going to do, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but they, I don't know. My recollection is they kind of, they don't really go down those paths. It's just
Yeah.
kind of there.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
So to wrap it up with the whole time trapper thing, then this maniac is messing around because he knows what's going to happen, and he knows what's already happening. So that line about, you don't know how long I've been playing this game. You just thought I had a curtain of time. You just thought I didn't want you to go. First of all, it was like, what, 30 days into the future or whatever, and then it was, I didn't want you to go back to the end of time, right?
Right.
You just thought I was messing around like that. You thought I was just turning you into babies. You thought I was a controller. You didn't realize that it wasn't these little battles. I was affecting your entire meaning, your entire
Mm-hmm.
meaning of existence,
Yeah.
right? And this is stuff that obviously plays in like 5 years later, and future stories,
That's
the
right.
very notion. So it's not, what's so funny is, and readers know that, Legion readers know this. It's not the first time, 5 years later is not the first time that the Legion gets a reboot because of something to do with the time trapper. I mean, this is very clearly, he's messing around with their very purpose or their very inspiration.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just the whole that whole idea of that reveal that we don't want to talk about. That just means that, or that there's a possibility that there is another Legion out there that we don't know about.
Right. And we get that. See, and that was my other kind of point to this, was like, in Superboy's time, in that very Silver Age time, because it works both ways, right? If the Legion are going to a time that no longer exists, well, then obviously Superboy is coming from a place that no longer exists, right? Like, there is a notion that the pre-Crisis DC universe that gets destroyed in Crisis still could have existed. It did exist. It exists in that Superboy's time,
Yes.
from the Superboy's time.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's so hard to talk about. God, I apologize, listeners, but we're not there at that story yet, so you can't really filter in that knowledge yet because it's not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just got to go with sort of what's being hinted at and what we can sort of extrapolate. Yeah, you're right. I do think there could be an argument that, that there could be a Legion that we've never seen had that future played out, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get to play out.
Yeah.
Very clearly, what I find so interesting is that Levitz is saying, oh, the Legion as you know it is from the DC universe that exists because of Legends. It's just everything we knew about it is wrong.
Wrong.
Everything
Yeah.
they knew about it is wrong. Like, I think I read somewhere online that the great emigration, the great colonization didn't happen until like the 2700s or something like that. Whereas we know it to eventually show up a few years from now,
Mm-hmm.
with invasion and valor and all that other stuff, right? And even though Cosmic Boy says it was supposed to happen around this time, I read in a few places that, I mean, it seems like it happens at many different times. That's the one aspect of Legion lore that I would love to now.
Yeah.
We've gotten hints of it. Polar Boy saying, I'm from a colony world, and Cosmic Boy and Night Girl in this miniseries saying our people are from that emigration.
Mm-hmm.
People from Braille, people from Cthulhu. I want to know what really is that emigration, not post crisis. And it's so hard to find online because they mix in a lot of the post crisis stuff. They're already mixing in Bendis's stuff. And it's like, no, 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 no. I want to know what it's like prior to 1986. This idea of the great emigration. So they have to totally relearn. Not only does the Legion have to relearn, but all the historians have to relearn what 1986 DC is about, and that's why those records are always spotty, because they, it's a great, they already figured it out, right? Like, that excuse has been around forever, and it's like perfect because now you can say,
Yeah.
well, that's why it was spotty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so interesting, so fascinating.
I guess we have to put a pin in some of this stuff because that just begs examination and discussion about the importance of where we're going with this whole idea, and the reaction. I was thinking of the reaction at the time that I was reading that,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. It just seems like it was kind of downplayed or wanting to be ignored at some point. I don't know if you had the same reaction. And yet what you are talking about is like this greater implication to the entire DC universe that is just fascinating.
Yeah, that they never really played with, although the concept would come back again with, say, something like hyper time or whatever, you know. And it gives me notions about the time trapper himself. Again, they say past can't be changed. That's not true if you live in the future. If you live in the present, past can be changed. To go on a meta level, Time Trapper is not in the present. He's in his present, but it's our future, right?
Mm-hmm.
We dictate the stories. Writers dictate the stories, right? So him being all on his throne thinking he's safe, well, clearly we know he's not safe.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also wonder, what universe is he in?
Yeah.
Right? He thinks he's in the Legends DC universe, but when we get to the Revelation, it's like, you might have created your own prison, idiot. You might think you're in one place, but maybe you're not.
Yeah.
And especially with him saying in this miniseries, I love this notion, I want to extend the end of time backwards.
Backwards, yes.
I was like, I don't even know what that means, but that's fascinating. I love that idea. He's gonna connect the end with the beginning, but not the other way, backwards. Like, that's wild.
Is this the first time that we've heard seen Time Trapper express such a notion?
I think, at least in the stories read.
So yeah. Why? I mean, obviously he wants to control time, or he wants to take over the universe in some aspect, right? I mean, I think we've seen that before.
Yeah.
It's not just games with the Legion themselves specifically, right? But this seems to me like the first time we've seen him go or move beyond kind of small potatoes, and he wants to, in a sense, he wants to destroy time. He wants to destroy the universe, because you can't destroy the universe you destroy time, you destroy the universe, right? So he's got this nihilistic streak in him now for some reason. And I don't know that that is ever fully explored, as I recall.
He says in issue 4, but recent events have led me not to be content with ultimate victory. I wish to have it all, and I will extend the end of time backwards. Well, I mean, I guess that means that what he wants there to only be the end of time. He doesn't want history, which is, how do you have the end of time if you don't have history?
Oh, yeah.
You know, but he wants it all to be a wasteland, so he's the only one left. You know, but how do you get to be the last man alive if it hasn't already happened? But and that's why he's extending it backwards, like you know, it's like almost like the reverse of the antimatter cloud, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in a way. You know, the antimatter cloud is going this way, and the end of time is going that way. I don't know.
It's like a immovable object in unstoppable force, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And if that is truly his end goal, we've already seen him portrayed in Legionnaires 3 and, you know, some other stories where, you know, he delights in these games that he involves the Legion in. If he does reach his goal, that seems counterproductive to what we've seen of him up to this point.
right. What is he gonna do?
Yeah.
If he has nobody to terrorize, he's just gonna sit there.
And what is it? What did you say? The recent events or whatever that he says something about.
Recent events have led me not to be content with ultimate victory. I wish to have it all.
So what is he referring to there?
He wishes to have all of time.
Well, no, I
Be
mean
the end of time. Oh,
what precipitated that? What caused him to come to that conclusion?
oh, right. And I think he made mention of that before too, where he was like, you know, it's like the games are I think, and this is the reason why I don't think he's necessarily the one behind the time storm. I think it's because the crisis happened.
Okay, that's what I was thinking as well.
Right. And because the crisis happened, even though it was history to the Legion, it didn't actually happen until it happened in our present, right? His brain's just exploding all over the place. But it makes sense, right? Nothing, you could talk about the Great Commandy's Great Disaster and all that, but until it really actually happens in our books, it just is a potential, right? It's like, say if the Dark Phoenix saga was this great grand mystery within the X-Men universe that they always talked about, but we never read it. It doesn't really exist until we read it.
Right.
You know? So you could say, writers could say that the crisis is in the Legion history, but it's not. It's not until the 12-issue maxi series comes out.
Right.
And even they were like, what is this? You know,
yeah.
We knew there was a crisis, but we didn't know it was like this. Right. For that time storm to happen around 1986, really, you could say a time storm will always happen around whatever the present day DC universe is. It's kind of that sliding timescale thing, right? Yeah. It's to keep it safe so that whatever it needs to be, Crisis, Infinite Crisis, 0 Hour, Flashpoint, whatever it needs to, Dark Metal, whatever it needs to be, nobody can really muck around with it, you know, like a time trapper or whatever, you know, because it's got to be preserved, you know. So
well maybe that's what's motivating him to do what he's doing, because he realizes that he is not the end all be all, even though he is the thing at the end of time, and there's something grander, greater,
right
than him.
Yeah. He almost got knocked off his little pedestal because the anti-monitor could have wiped out everything, and then that would have been it. Because Time Trapper's not on that level, you know. He's not on a cosmic level like that,
right?
Even though he likes to think he is,
or obviously a macrocosmic level.
Yeah.
If you want to bring in death metal and all that stuff, so
which I'm not finished yet. So that's great. I mean, I sort of think of it like in Marvel terms, right? You got like eternity up here and the abstract.
Oh, right. Yeah, the abstracts.
Then you got like the Olympians, and then you got like or the the Celestials, all that. But then you keep going lower to like Galactus, Olympians, humans, blah blah blah, mutants, whatever, blah blah blah. Yeah, Eternals are in there somewhere. Um, so I think the crisis is what woke him up, and he's like, "Oh, I better do something." Now, here's where I will sort of play future DC reader. Um, it is pretty bold that he's messing around with a Superman concept because we do come to learn many decades later that if that Superman sort of is the linchpin of the universe, right? And like when you mess with the Superman, you could potentially mess with the understanding of the very DC universe. I mean,
Hmm.
Bendis even talked about, was it Bendis? I think where they were saying, yeah, it was Bendis, right? It was Bendis when they were saying in one of the Superman stories or action that people remembered Connor Kent, like the Martha Kent remembered the clone Superboy, but Superman didn't remember him, and
Oh,
Mister
right.
Mister Terrific was like, yeah, that's because when the multiverse shifts, there are some people that shift along with it,
Ah,
and you're definitely one of those people that some things get remembered and some don't, because if you Superman, if you always remembered everything about every multiversal shift, you would go mad, basically, I guess
hmm,
he was trying to say. So um Time Trapper doesn't realize what he really is messing around with, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
And I think, and that's another reason why he's not omnipotent, he's not all powerful. He has fallacies, and he's just delusional. I mean, because we know what's going to happen to him eventually, and all of this just came out because of this mini series, and really only came out like mostly the last two issues, but stuff in the first two issues too.
And not to add, well, to add to, not to get too far off course, but all this discussion is just fascinating to me, especially in terms of one of the reveals we get much later about Time Trapper
Oh yes,
and what this miniseries, who this miniseries is focusing on, right? So
right.
that, oh boy, if we could ever talk about that.
He says it, right? Doesn't he say it in issue 4? He says, "Oh, it is secretly fitting that you be a part of this."
Right?
Now, Time Trapper saying because you're the first
Right,
Legionnaire,
right.
blah blah blah, right? But what we know later, it's sort of like, oh yeah, God, it writes itself,
Yeah,
man. It
yeah.
writes itself. Love that. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. I hope listeners understood all those high concept
Uh,
stuff, because I mean it really is the thing that I pulled from this miniseries more than anything.
well, it's the most interesting aspects. Like I said, my
Right.
criticisms are more structural,
Right.
and in terms of the writing, the storytelling of it. So, yeah, if you like me, if you back off on that stuff, this stuff is really fascinating
Yeah.
and interesting. But so let me challenge you on this. Um, that's that's us now. What? How many years later? A
30
lot.
some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
decades later, looking back at all this other stuff that's happened since then, right? At the time, do you would you did you or would you have made those same kind of connections, um, with the information that you had then?
I think I would have I think I definitely knew that Cosmic Boy wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because Night Girl points it out. But also because, as you mentioned, Levitz uses our history, our very 80s raw history with like Chernobyl and especially the Challenger, which most of us of our generation watched live.
Yeah.
You know, um, I was sitting on, how like rooms had in the old days, they had those big air conditioners that were like big units all along the wall, like and the vents came up, right? I was
Mm.
sitting on one of those because we all were in one classroom. So I'll always remember that, always watching it live. And then so I think I knew that was the mystery was that our history was right. Cosmic Boy's history was wrong. And then you knew the Superman thing was coming. We definitely knew that that storyline was coming. Um, I'm not sure I would have focused it in with like all the whole pre-crisis, post-crisis stuff, and you certainly can't factor in what the revelation is because you don't quite
Right.
know it yet.
Right.
Um, but it's odd to see at the end of issue 4, Crypto
Mm,
and what's supposed to be Superboy, but really looks like Superman. Um, it is odd to see them because hey, Byrne said they don't exist.
right.
But we know they exist because the Legion still talks about them. It's kind of like when you see the Supergirl thing, Supergirl statue in the Legion's time. Like we shouldn't be seeing that, and eventually we won't. That will get nixed. I don't think I got a real sense of the limbo DC universe until maybe like a year or two after, where you realized, whoa, that's a weird year.
Yeah.
1986 was a strange year for comics. Once you get Burned Superman and then Wonder Woman finally shows up, you're like, the hell was that last year?
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
So yeah, not. I was gonna say just not as refined.
Yeah.
My Crisis Kid brain wasn't as refined as that. So.
That whole year was just such a weird time in comics. Uh, uh, Maybe even despite the weirdness of it, I was looking back for some other reason at the major things that came out that year, and I think other people have made this declaration as well. Maybe 1986 was one of the greatest years in comic books, especially superhero comic books. And yeah, but it was just living in it and trying to understand the post-crisis milieu. It was just a very interesting time. That's all I guess I could say about it. It's just what was going on, and so you get things like the Cosmic Boy miniseries, and it's trying to define some of those elements. Even then, I was recognized that they're trying to reveal something different about the time in which we were reading, and but not giving us enough, right? You were, at least I was glomming on to other things that were being published at the time with my limited funds. I couldn't get everything. So but as I relied on my friends at the time who bought other things that I couldn't. So at least we were trading and reading each other's things so that we were really trying to understand, like Cosmic Boy, to tie it back into this, really trying to understand what the history of the DC universe was at this time, because it was so like the time stream, so chaotic and swirly, whirly pulley.
I mean, it's wet concrete,
That's good.
And we were getting teased, right? We knew things were coming. We knew a Justice League was coming because we saw it in History of the DC Universe #2 by this time. We didn't know it was going to be a humor book. The shot of the Justice League in History of the DC Universe by Perez just looks like a Justice League, but it's got Captain Atom, Shazam, it's got Dr. Fate, it's got Black Canary, right? It's got all the ones that show up in the Giffen DeMatteis Wahaha era. You just don't know the tone, right? It doesn't give you tone. And it's not until you saw images of that Kevin Maguire cover in promos that I was like, oh, what is this? This is like the first inkling of like, this looks weird. In fact, I remember reading that History of the DC Universe, seeing that Justice League cover and going, who's that silver guy? Is that Captain Atom? Like, because his book hadn't come out yet.
Oh, right.
I don't think.
Yeah.
In fact, I think in this miniseries, there's an ad for his series. And even in Legends, you're sort of getting teased by a Justice League. You can sort of tell that some of those characters are going to probably become a Justice League. Not all of them, because some of them are just, again, Legends is just them showing you who are the big players in the DC universe, So, yeah, very wet cement, very chaotic. And it's not only going to happen in Legion. My God, we're going through like Donna Troy stuff soon.
Oh,
and
yeah.
eventually Hawkman, and it's like all of a sudden everybody needs to start from scratch on in one way or another. And I always say that's why I was glad that I got into the DC universe when I did, because I had just enough knowledge pre-crisis from like 1982 to love the DC universe, but not be like a slave to it,
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
And so when they mucked around, so then post-crisis is like, this is I get to be on the ground floor of everything
Mm-hmm.
that's new.
Mm-hmm.
That was amazing. That was so
Yeah.
much fun.
I felt the same way.
Yeah. Not everybody did.
No.
And let's be fair, the Legion suffered for this for a while.
Yes.
You know,
Well, and maybe even
unfortunately.
continues to suffer.
Yeah, you're right. They still don't really have a handle of it, right? Like even the Millennium stuff, the whole Rose thing, Rose and Thorn, like what the hell is that? Like, Donna Troy certainly has suffered. Hawkman has certainly suffered. Aquaman there for a while.
Mm.
There's a lot of things that they, and I know you read like Marv Wolfman's stories and other people's stories about how editors, whoever the editors were at the time, some of them were just a-holes about, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. First of all, it's not your book. Like, DC's telling you to do it. Do it. And they're like, no, I don't want to. I don't know. And it's like, so it's like, all right, fine. You're going to take away this character. Well, I'll just create a new character. And then they, do it in a way that it still kind of feels like the way it originally happened, but it's not really.
Yeah.
And then eventually DC just turns around and brings them all back again
Yeah.
anyway. So it's kind of like your story about when you talk about Tyrock, the creation of Tyrock. Like Mike Grell's like, all right, you want me to create this character? I gave you a character. You don't want my character. You don't want my ideas. So you want me to? All right, then I'm gonna make him look like Elvis, and then you make him serious, right? And it's like, God, why are they so petty? Creators are so petty, like Time Trapper.
Look at you, Peter, calling out the creators of the DC universe.
It's true. It's true. If they just would have did what Marv Wolfman said, everything starts from number one.
Mm-hmm.
Take, I think it was Roy Thomas's idea, change DC's name, because what's DC? We're still dealing with that. What is DC versus Marvel? Marvel has imagery. When you say Marvel Comics, that has Marvel, right? The word Marvel. What's DC? And I think it was Roy Thomas. He wanted to change it to Action Comics. Instead of naming it after Detective, name it after Action.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do that. And the agent, they were like, no way, we can't do that.
Yeah. Too much money involved.
Right. They should have done it. We would have had the New 52 30 years earlier, 20 some years earlier. And it might have actually worked. Because you had Byrne on Superman, you had Perez on Wonder Woman, you could have got like Frank Miller or Alan, somebody on Batman that's totally new and different. It could have been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been amazing, but we'll never know.
Peter, there was, I just wanted to focus on a little bit on Night Girl. I talked about her much earlier.
Yes.
In the first issue, we get that 2-page introduction to the character, just in case you don't know who she is. And based on her, and I've always liked Night Girl.
Me too.
I like her look. I like her tenacity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's so Silver Age that she becomes Night Girl eventually because she's in love with Cosmic Boy. She sees Cosmic Boy on the holos or whatever, and she needs to be with him. So she forces her father to give her superpowers so that she could do it. Anyway, it doesn't work out, but in terms of the whole joining the Legion thing to be closer to Cos, but she does end up with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the beginning of it. And then in this miniseries, so it's Cosmic Boy, and what did I say at the description of that house ad, right? The story of one man's perilous journey through time, space, and the depths of his soul. Well, yes, but the Night Girl was along with him. And if it wasn't for her, I think Cosmic Boy would have potentially, I mean, sure, not, it wouldn't have happened because he's the quote unquote hero, right? But, he could have possibly succumbed to his own failings as a Brellian. I was going to say human being, but that would be species. Although they do come from Earth, right? Because we
Right.
get the whole character of what's his name, Krinsky.
Mm-hmm.
We get that reveal, right? And
Right.
you were talking before about the migration from Earth and the seeding in the planets,
Yeah.
all that stuff, right? Um, in issue 1, while Cosmic Boy is recovering from his, I don't know what, like we talked about, we don't know exactly what happened there at the beginning, but she says, "Is there anything I haven't fixed?" And we, from those very first pages of issue 1, we see her rescuing Cosmic Boy, taking care of him, getting clothes, the antiques that she talks about, so they could walk around and not call attention to themselves. There's, to me, there's just so much characterization of Night Girl in this miniseries that I don't think we've ever gotten before. And she's just kind of a sort of a footnote in a way in this series, but she is rock's rock, if you if you will.
Yeah.
Rock Crin's rock. I just love that idea of this person who loves this character so much, Cosmic Boy so much, that she goes in the past to live in these ancient, antiquated, suffocating times. There's a point where she's trying to fly off with him and makes note of all the wires around and how suffocating it is, right?
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great little tidbit of world building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we get to in issue 2, I think they're dealing with the crowd that's rushing, the crazed crowd that's rushing the research center, which, by the way, that whole scene, just given what happened earlier this year, just a little too close for comfort for my taste.
Especially the line that the policeman says, or the guard that says, "Don't shoot," or something like that. He goes, "It's our job to get hurt." You
Mm,
see that? I was like, "Oh my God."
yeah, right. How prescient, how bizarrely
Boy.
prescient.
Yep, yep, yep.
But Rock is, I can't remember what he's saying, but Lito's like, don't overcomplicate things while we're fighting. Again, grounding the guy, because he's getting off into his head and potentially going to get harmed or get her harmed or other people harmed because he's not focusing on what needs to happen right now. And then in issue 4, this I love this scene. So they've split up in the issue to what is it? They're trying to get to Time Trapper, or to the,
Trying to get to the bubble so they could go back.
oh yes, the
Yeah.
bubble, right? And then we get Time Trapper's narration as he's watching the stuff unfold in front of him. The girl is particularly interesting. I never noticed her before, which I'm sure a lot of DC readers at the time would say the same. I suppose because she isn't a true legionnaire. Still, she displays courage for a mortal. She stands firmly against warriors I have gathered from across many millennia and planets, not unafraid, but confident in her own power, rightfully confident, it appears. And I love that she gets the respect of this, demi cosmic being, that will again, pardon me, rock the Legion's world with the revelation that's coming. I just love that, because in case people didn't know, Night Girl's power, I don't think we've explicitly stated that here, is super strength in the dark. It has to be dark out for her to have that super strength. So for her to go up against this throng of history rejects, including Nazis, and looks like, I was going to say aliens. Yeah, there's an alien in there. And it's not dark in that they show in here. I guess the implication is that it is dark enough for her strength, but the way that it's drawn, the way it's colored, doesn't look like it. Anyway, she
Yeah.
goes in there anyway and takes care of the situation. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that aspect of the series on top of all of the other great stuff that you brought up.
Right, because we get a character that has been in sort of like the fringe.
Yeah,
We saw her. There was that one point where there was some dedication of the old Legion rocket, and the crowds were rushing in, and she was like, "Cosmic Boy, take me out of here!" And then, um, and she comes across as, I sort of likened. She keeps complaining about the past, and I thought, okay, what was 10,000, what was 1021 like? Like, would I want to go
right.
back 1,000 years? And like, what,
Yeah,
now I would have known what clothes were. Clothes are clothes, right? And she goes, "Oh, this television thing." I'm like, you got television in the 30th century, come on. But I mean, I understand the point. But you're right. I like that first of all, when she was looking at Cosmic Boy as a young girl, she called him sexy, which is never a word I really would have thought about Cosmic Boy, and it's like, but she sees him as sexy, right?
not even when he was wearing the what do you
Not
call that?
me. No, the girder, the
Yeah,
girder,
the
not the girder, the
girdle.
girdle. Thank you. Whatever
Yeah,
that thing is. Yeah. Bustier. You also have to give her. I think she's always been sort of rock solid, though. Like, I quickly went through the first appearance and the second appearance just to see when they actually brought up the whole "I'm in love with Cosmic Boy" thing, right? Um, and she was pretty solid back then as a character too in that first appearance.
mm,
She was like pretty confident and whatever. And you have to imagine that she is like a gold star with the substitutes because she's dating the founder of the team, right?
yeah,
Like, that
yeah,
puts validation onto the substitutes in many ways. It's so I like her character. She feels like a like she's sort of cut from the Phantom Girl cloth, but she's got Shrinking Violet's sort of not quite that severe attitude, but
mm.
you know,
A little bit of sass.
yeah, she's got some sass in her. She's like a mix of a lot of the like she's like a mix of Shadowlass and Phantom Girl and Shrinking Violet. She's like a mix of all of those characters. And like you mentioned, twice she pinpoints the problem.
Hmm.
It's not that the past is wrong, it's that what you know of the past is wrong. And just from whatever, she's like, "Oh, um, something about this planet," and then Cosmic Boy's like, "Oh, right, this planet, the magnetism. I can
Yeah,
use the magnetism to, blah 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 my way out of, babble babble tech babble whatever, and then they do it, right?
yep,
And she's his sounding board in a lot of ways, and he's her sounding board, so they can talk about, the situation at hand. So yeah, I like that character a lot. I love her cat suit and all that.
yeah,
I'm a fan of Night Girl.
yeah. Good, good.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, 'cause we talked a little bit about the art and maybe our lack of enjoyment of it, generally speaking, but an issue at the end, near the end of issue 4, where we get all the time trapper stuff.
Mm.
I questioned before about where did Giffen come in? What was his role exactly in this? But in this sequence, starting on page 17 ish, uh, man, I can clearly see in some of these panels where Giffen had a more of a. It looks like he has more of a heavy hand in the pages, and I think that's why I responded so much more, so much more positively to these pages.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention the coloring, it's just really well done. It reminded me of some of the stuff that we saw in Legionnaires 3, although I know, we talked about before Cologne did that stuff, but some of the other things that we've seen Giffen do involving the time trapper, I was really getting that vibe in these last few pages.
Right.
So I
right.
just wanted to make note of that.
Yeah. I like I said, it's not as visually enriching. I don't know what the word is, as like engaging, like Amethyst, and it doesn't use borders in the way that he did Cologne used in Amethyst, or like Arik, Son of Thunder, or what else? Like even the Legion backup that had crazy sort of panel structures and little wild things morphing into other things, you know. But again, they're trying to tell a story, and I
I,
think
I
maybe that was
I wonder, maybe what was Giffen slated to do this miniseries and just couldn't get to it for some reason, and so they brought in Cologne. That's one of the things I did actually try to find out, because I
right.
was really curious how the whole art uh, uh, assignments for this, how that came about. Um, because like what you're saying, this is not the Ernie Cologne that we've seen in other things that we've talked about. So it just seems like maybe he just didn't have time to play around on the page, and this was just more of a, we got to get this done. Maybe there's a time crunch or whatever, and so it was more of a journeyman approach to the visual storytelling.
Yeah, because
Possibly.
there's a lot of words, right? There's a lot
Well,
of
there's
stuff
that
that
too.
has there's a lot of stuff that has to be spit out for the
Yeah,
reader.
that's true. Hmm.
Yeah, so you don't want to confuse them with fancy art, and even like the stuff that was going on in Legionnaires 3, you know. They do it a little bit here and there every now and then, but
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, not a lot, not a
Yeah.
lot. Like to the point where so they're race in issue 4, they're racing against time. They have to find the bubble before the hourglass runs out. And then they meet up with the time trapper. He's got the hourglass in hand, and he's totally joking, you know, jerking them around. He's like, "Oh, you only got 7 strands left. Oh, only six more sands left." You know, and then Cosmic Boy twists the metal. I mean, the hourglass, but he twists glass, right? Like, are we to get like he's so powerful at that point, or so enraged at that point that he can twist? Is there metal in glass? Am I missing something there? So,
The
or is it?
silicate in glass, or
I
yeah.
don't know. I guess maybe, or was it? You know, and then part of me was like, is that artistic choice? What are they doing here? I don't know.
Well, he does explicitly say the hourglass isn't non-metallic.
Oh, oh, okay. I missed
Just
that.
yeah, but it sure looks like it's glass.
It
So,
sure does look like it.
and
But then you
I,
get the great splash page afterwards, where
oh
our
yeah,
man,
yeah,
where he's just smashing it anyway. He's like, oh, okay, I don't care. Do what you want.
and yeah, and laughing maniacally, and he
Yeah,
continues doing that for several panels. So
yeah. Oh, I
yeah.
missed that. I think I read that as the hourglass isn't metallic. Okay, my bad. Okay, so that's on me. But it still takes him a lot of, you know, energy to do it. I guess
Hmm.
for that sort of precision to just twist it like that. But yeah, it's still good. It's still comfortable reading. Like I did enjoy it.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's, you know, like you're reading. I like when Cologne plays around in the Legion universe. You know,
yeah.
it feels right. You know, um, and you get some cartooning aspects to it, like during that riot scene, that insurrection scene, um, where uh, the scientists are just sort of standing there, right, and the Earth Firsters, as they call them, are yelling at them, and then things come to a head. It's a scientist that actually throws the first punch, at least in the on the panel on page I don't know what it is, like
14.
14. Yeah, the sort of older one with the glasses, you know, as they
Yeah,
sort of come, he just goes, they go, we're going in. He's like, donk. He just hits him. I thought that was funny.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I did like that moment where Cosmic Boy at the end of issue 2 to kind of put the Legends thing together, and the first 2 issues where he's like, okay, if the notion is that superheroes are supposed to stay hidden, well, you know what? No, that's the craziest idea. I am Cosmic Boy, and I'm gonna show them. Maybe they need to see their heroes, and he just pulls off the costume, or he flies up, and he's just like, "All right, I'm taking care of this. No more secretive stuff." So I like
Well,
that.
well, and it's Night Girl who spurs him on to that, because uh I mean, he does say, you're right. We're reduced to hiding who we are. That's the craziest idea I've seen in this insane century. And she says the astronauts aren't hiding. Look
Hmm.
at Jason and the others. And he says, "You're right, Lita."
Yep.
And then boom, he goes into action.
It wouldn't
So
see. this wouldn't happen without. We talked about it in Legionnaires 3. Remember, there's that scene where Saturn Girl and Cosmic Boy are in prison, and Saturn Girl's just sort of sitting there, and Cosmic Boy's like talking himself, and she was like, "I was just waiting for you to figure it out, dude." She goes, "I wasn't. She's right. It's interesting. He has that complex in the end of issue 1 after he gets shot, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
falls on the beach and he's like, I gotta fix history, or maybe I'm just not successful without the Legion behind me, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, slow your roll, Cosmic Boy. Like, that's a heck of a complex to have just because of,
Yeah.
what I understand the situation's heavy. So I like that maybe because he's with Night Girl that maybe he does drop his guard, but maybe in a way that's not counterproductive, like when you're with your loved one or whatever, somebody takes the lead, or, you know, maybe situations change. And she is so fun and she's so like headstrong in this series that uh he's like, okay, this is my vacation. I don't want to be a Legion. I just want to be chill, right? And then it's her way of sort of saying, hey, dummy, wake up. Come on, you're better than this,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
stop moping around. We'll figure it
Mm-hmm.
out. 'Cause she's
Mm-hmm.
the one who keeps saying, we'll figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. Something will happen. You know, just relax. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. She gets a good
think
spotlight.
I think Night Girl is the hero of this story. I really do.
I agree with you. She does also say in issue 1, page 7, something about, at least in the 30th century, there's no doubt about how important heroes can be. And I wrote here, could it be a statement about how the people idolize the Legion? Could it also be how the Legion, and when you talk about the Legion, you have to talk about all of the members who are from all of these worlds are inspired to be in the Legion because they're inspired by Superboy, right? And it's like there was that funnel back to Superboy again through the Legends lens. Um, because we sort of take it for I sort of take it for granted. It's the Legion, right? The Legion, but they're on Earth, right? Oh, right, but they're also made up of Braillians, as you mentioned, and people from Wyneth and people from Dryad and wherever else and whatever else. So it's like the entire, maybe this is why readers were panicking. The entire 30th century doesn't exist without Superboy. Not just the Legion. It really is sort of
Mm-hmm.
like the ideals of what it means to be a hero come from one person, to put it generically.
Yeah.
So I like that comment that she made.
Mm-hmm.
One other notion, and I'm the same way. I have like small things. There's like probably 4 more topics I could talk about, smaller topics, but they just sort of pale in comparison. First of all, that Cosmic Boy doesn't recognize the guy's name, Jason Krinsky. Hello, that there was no mention of that at all. That's weird. That's
Mm.
weird. At least from Cosmic Boy's point of view.
Yeah. That was for us. That was a nod to the readers, right?
But
So
then he showed up again in 3. I was surprised. I was like, oh, he's
mm,
back again.
mm-hmm.
He's going to help him fix the time bubble, but no mention of, no? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought that was odd too. It's like, okay, it's right there. Why are we not talking about the elephant in the room?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, and maybe that's why, maybe you're right. Like the nod at the end of issue 2, and I don't know, did they decide, because they kept talking about who could we bring from the 80s to help us with this time machine. I guess they don't know Rip Hunter at this time, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
know anybody else. So they're like, well, let's just go back to that Krinsky. Levis was probably like, I guess I'll go back to Krinsky again. I don't know. It's just weird. The other thing I thought was fascinating was that they start talking about secret identities in issue
Mm-hmm.
3, right? And then, well, the Legion doesn't have secret identities, except Sensor Girl, of course. He still doesn't know who she is. That happened while he was in the 20th century. He left in issue 23. Her reveal is in issue 25, 26. He's in the 80s. He has no idea who she is yet.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine when he comes back, either someone's going to tell him off panel, or I hope there's a moment where he's like, "You're who?" So I thought that was fun.
Hmm.
Totally didn't even think about that. And then I wrote, along with your art stuff, like anytime they go through the time and you see, I like that they mentioned the rainbow effect, even if it wasn't visually there. But also anytime you see the years go by, right? Like, just I love that. And
Yeah.
I in my mind, I think that they see the years. It's sort of like maybe a projection of the time bubble or something. Like, shows you in front. Here comes 2990. So interesting when they go in issue 3 and they go to the future, right? First of all, they do the whole Star Trek thing, right? Star Trek
Mm-hmm.
4,
Mm-hmm.
slingshot their way through. So you see the Legion HQ. It's gigantic. Love that. 2986 to 87. Then they go past the Time Institute. My young 1986 brain thought that was a future Legion headquarters.
Ah, yeah.
I forgot that it was the Time Institute, even though it says, I think that's supposed to be a T and an I, but I don't know. Yeah, so I love that. I love the journey and all the time stuff, and that art page, and Cosmic Boy slowly coming to realize where he's going. I wish they would have stopped at 2989. That would have been awesome, right?
Yeah, I
Stop
was just gonna.
there. Or not, or if not 2989, I guess, well, when does 5 years later? It takes place in 2995, I think, right? Because it's 5 years later. So it
Oh,
came
right.
out in
Right.
89, but
That's right. Mm-hmm.
1984, 85. Yeah, okay. Never mind. Um, what did you think of the very last? I mean, do you have any thoughts about? I mean, I know it's stuff we're not going to be talking about till later, but just that shot, the last again. This is a miniseries featuring Time Trapper, who, just like Legionnaires 3, he gets the last word. Uh, what did you think of those last few pages?
Well, yeah. So I think just like when I first read it 30 some years ago, um, it was because, like I said earlier, this was in this swirling mass of chaos of DC publishing history, and so what does this mean? Like I said, Man of Steel was basically done. We didn't quite have the Burn Superman ongoing series, but we knew something was up, and given the change post crisis, the changes post crisis, to see what is ostensibly Superboy with crypto here, it's like, what does that mean? What's the game? What's the next game involving them? And I even actually thought, even now, when I reread this, I was thinking, is that actually them? Are
Oh,
those the beings, or are these representations,
hmm.
like chess pieces like we got in Legionnaires 3? So it's like, well, okay, uh let's go. Let's hit that next chapter, right? And yet we have to wait 5 months for that to really materialize, right? Because the next thing, as we see on that following page, is a full page ad for the Universal Project, a 4-part saga, it says.
Yeah.
So it just, well, I don't know. Is it brilliant because it's teasing something that's coming, does it work against itself because it's so far away? 5 months is not that long, but
Right. But it felt like long,
it did,
because
yeah.
you got to have. It's so weird. You got to establish the Burn Superman series first before you do. You got to establish the character before you do anything about the repercussions of the character.
That's true.
Meanwhile, issue 3 was a Legends crossover, so it's like, okay, 3 issues in and you already have a crossover, for Superman. So, but yeah, I get it. And Byrne probably was like, maybe he was like, well, let me do a couple issues
Mm-hmm.
before we have to explain something that, in essence, really is not Superman's problem. It's the Legion's problem.
Right.
Yeah.
but it's I was glad that they wanted to address it, and not just within the Legion
Right,
book or books.
right.
So it was important enough to really address it in a larger concern. And how bigger then was Byrne's Superman? I don't
Big.
was the Frank Miller Dark Knight Year One, Batman Year One, was that at the same time, or is that later than
Yeah,
the Byrne Superman launch?
it's the same because there's an ad there. There's a couple ads
Oh,
in
there is.
this.
That's right. I did see
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we've already gotten Dark Knight though. That's the thing. We've already
that's true.
gotten Dark
Hmm.
Knight, and we're getting Man of Steel, and then along comes Year One. Yeah, and
The
then
only other interesting thing about this, Peter, was, like I said, I got Cosmic Boy as it was being published. I was not getting Legion of Superheroes at this time,
oh, interesting.
because I had to, like, here we are there, or here they are promoting the Universo project, and I didn't buy it. I didn't come back to it until the the thing that comes after that.
Oh, wow.
The story that Cosmic Boy is promoting.
Right.
So yeah, that I to this day I don't understand why I fell off of Legion around this time,
Hmm.
and did not pick this up. This is a perfect jumping on opportunity with the banner chapter 1 on that cover to come into this, knowing that something else is coming. Well, I mean, they're even explicit at the bottom of the final page of this, right?
Right.
To be continued in the pages of Legion of Superheroes number 36. So I don't know what.
It's issue 37, 38, but they're
Right,
saying
right.
36, yeah, at the end. And then there it is. Are we wrapped up with we're wrapped up with the Cosmic Boy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That page, like, talk about selling your other titles. If you're not already following the adventures of the Legion of Superheroes, Eric, it even says to you,
I
now's the
know.
time to start.
I was stupid.
The Universal Project, a 4-part saga, now on sale. And it was now on sale. The first issue was out before
Mm-hmm.
Cosmic Boy number
Mm-hmm.
1. Yeah.
And maybe it's hard to say. Maybe at the time, I because there wasn't a whole lot of pre-ordering back then from my comic book buying. It was, I knew about a series somehow, and I just went to my comic shop and said, put this on my list, right?
Right, right.
And if I wasn't already getting it, like I said, I wasn't already getting Legion of Superheroes. So if it was already on the stands, it's possible that my shop did not have a copy. And it was really hard. I remember it was really hard to get even recently published issues of comic books.
Yeah.
At least my shop.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if I can't get the first part of the story, I don't want to dive in to a later part of it. So I was waiting for. I think I was probably waiting for a good opportunity to jump back on, and that was the next storyline.
Well, cool. Well, we as we mentioned, that is the next thing we're going to jump into. We're going to continue our anniversary celebration and talk about the first part of the Universo project. I can't wait. No bad words. It's going to be excellent. I want to hear no criticisms.
Oh, we shall see. Challenge accepted, Peter.
Okay.
No,
And
I'm very much looking forward to this too. Like I said,
yeah,
never read it, and this is gonna be fun. It should
yeah,
be fun.
should be fun. And we'll go back to our normal format. We'll do some feedback. We'll do dips into the larger DC universe, whatever else was going on at that time. Um, I think I know I am. I don't know if you are, but I'm going to try to do a Universo deep dive as much as I can,
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of get an understand. Not that we have to detail it, but it'll be certainly nice to go but have reference points, especially for me, because some of those other than his first appearance, I think they're all new to me.
Hmm.
So I can't wait. I can't wait, including maybe that Green Lantern issue. I'll probably read that again just to see where it all cements. So I'm so looking forward to that. And then that's what we'll do. We'll do for the next 4 episodes. It's just going to be all Universo project, all Universo time. So I can't wait. Can't wait. Would you recommend people read the Cosmic Boy miniseries if they haven't? If they're not, if they are a Legion fan, if they're
Yes, it's probably a qualified yes. If you're like Peter, who loves to dive into the connections and just generally know the history of particular stories in the Legion universe, it makes sense to read this because it is the prologue to what comes after the Universal Project.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of you don't know. I guess you don't need it, but it's helpful to have that to help ground that particular story,
Right.
even though it's been building up for a little while now.
Yeah.
So, and plus, if you're a fan of Night Girl and her boyfriend, Cosmic Boy, this is the series for you.
Yeah. And I think because of the way we're reading it too, the Superman Superboy story will probably have more, I'm assuming will have more of a finale feel, or at least another big, huge chapter feel than when I originally read it. Because I don't know if I was really making all these connections month to month and going, oh, right, this connects to Cosmic Boy, which connects to Legionnaires 3, which connects to blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? I was just sort of reading them as I was going.
Yeah.
And then you just get to those 2 issues and you're like, oh God, this is so great, yay. So now we're dealing with we are purposely looking, sometimes creating the tapestry.
Yeah.
So I imagine when we get to that 4-parter, it's 2 issues of Legion and 2 issues of 1 issue of Superman and 1 of Action.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be, we're going to have so much to say because now we have all this history with the Time Trapper and all this stuff. So yeah. Own the series for the covers alone. It's worth it for the covers alone. Cosmic Boy.
Oh, for sure.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Be a completist and fill your Legion gap. So. All right, cool, great. Well, this was fun. Again. We will be back, as we said, with the next Legion project whenever we're back. If you enjoyed this episode, email peter@thedailyrios.com.
Or you can email myself at longboxreview@gmail.com.
Any last words?
Long live the Legion? I don't know.
We never do it this because it's not, long live the Tales of the Legion project, heading toward the Universal project.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, all good. All right, we will see everybody next time.
All right, bye-bye.